Welcome into Basketball by Association. This is episode 46. My name is Arky. That is not Joel Cortez. Look who's here. We have two guest hosts for this podcast. Matt Dagostino of NBA.com. What's up, Matty Dags?
Hello, Mr. Shea.
And Beau Estes. They call him the GOATmentator for a reason. Beau, what's up, brother?
I don't know the reason, but yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm thrilled to be guest hosting with my man. Matt Dagostino and I sort of live in parallel worlds, but we never get to do anything really together. So I can't wait to talk all over the top of him here for the next.
Never. And as the GOATmentator's son, as they refer to me as, so this is quite the honor. I've looked up to you for so long, Mr. Estes.
Yeah, I know that's not true. So yeah,
we put these videos out on the YouTube channel. You can go find them pretty easily, and you would be surprised at how many random people have found the videos and just comment GOATmentator under the Beau Estes videos. So I look forward to that continuing here. I'd like to start, by the way, this is episode 46, and we usually name them after players who have worn the certain numbers in the NBA. So here are our choices. You guys get to help me choose. Do we go with Aaron Baines? Do we go with Dennis Bell? Do we go with Beau Outlaw?
Oh, I like the third choice.
Beau.
The name, yeah.
Okay. Beau Outlaw.
I believe that's Charles Beau Outlaw. Yeah,
yes.
Let's jump all over that one.
Because
this is Arky. I really do feel like this is the outlaw episode of your show. So yeah, I think it's good.
It better be. I mean, I'm talking to a guy from NBA.com and NBA TV, so there's that parallel universe we're talking about. I could have gone Jason Collins, but I think I'd rather ignore that part.
Yeah,
of some NBA time. Let's talk about the association happening right now. In fact, we're not going to call it, but we're basically going to assume that Utah's 11-game winning streak may be done, as they're in Denver right now. If they're at the half, they're down 25. Regardless of what the outcome is going to be, I'm the kind of guy that picked Denver to win the West, and it didn't start out the season that way, but it started to become more as of the last month or so that they played much better. But Utah's also been very, very good. The Lakers have been very, very good. So, Matt, I want to start with you. Out west, who stands out to you as the best team, and also who's number 2, 3, and 4? Give me your top 4 seeds that you think are playing the best ball right now.
Yeah, I think number 1 is the Lakers. Just without a doubt, the experience they have, not only with LeBron at the top, but now everybody having gone through the experience of winning a championship last year only helps them, especially with AD. But you're just seeing a team that knows what they need to do to win, and maybe it's a little bit more like last night, against Boston. They kind of eke things out in a fascinating kind of finish, but they know what they need to do on a certain night. And during the regular season, they can kind of pick and choose their spots a little bit more. I just think the experience and LeBron and AD at the top, I think gives them the number 1 seed. I like Denver number 2. I think Jokic is the MVP of the league so far. I think the experience they got in the playoffs last year was sizable. And I think they've got the young guys who are still maturing to where their ceiling is far above where, they are at right now. I think the Clippers are probably 3rd, just again off of pedigree, off of names that they have there and the experience they've got. And I'd put Utah 4th. I just don't know that Utah, do they scare you in a playoff series? I don't know that they strike fear into anybody at this point, despite the streak they've got going out. Despite the good coaching that they have, they've got talent on the roster. I'm just not sure that it's built necessarily for postseason success.
Beau, let me ask you a little bit about the same thing. Do you feel similar with Matt as far as the top 4 seeds? I mean, Denver has come on very strong as of late. They're actually, I think they're 4 seed right now if everything were to start today. The Lakers are in the 3rd spot right now, and it's been that team that's right now Utah white hot that's gotten themselves all the way up to the 1st place. But is that a kind of team that's got the staying power to continue that way the rest of the year?
Well, jumping off what Matt said, think about this. I was thinking about it earlier on. If you had to name how many All-Stars are on Utah for sure right now, how many are there? Is it one, maybe two? It's not three. It's maybe Rudy and Donovan Mitchell, maybe. And I'm not. That's an optimistic take. I think the tough thing is that we have 2 seasons: the regular season where X happens, and the playoffs where we, if you've been doing this long enough, know Y is going to happen. And the Lakers have no reason to overexert themselves in the regular season and just absolutely die out there for every last win. They know when it comes playoff time what it takes to win these games. So I do feel like Matt does, in that until you prove me wrong, the Lakers are my top team coming out of the West. The other thing is, there's also the contrasting feeling on the other team in LA. Until you prove me wrong, the Clippers don't make me sure of anything. Mm-hmm. They got smoked in comeback fashion in the bubble in the playoffs last year. So I don't know that I buy anything that they're doing. It's a very prove me wrong situation in LA on both those teams. I think Denver has really good pieces. I think, like Matt pointed out, Nikola Jokic is probably the MVP. And if it's not him in the era of small ball, it may be the other center, Joel Embiid, in the Eastern Conference. So 2 centers, maybe 1 and 2 in the small ball era for MVP race. So I think, I'm curious about the Utah and Denver angle of it. I do think that the Clippers and the Lakers have the most playoff talent that can win. But I'm not wildly confident in the Clippers getting it done in a playoff series.
Man, you guys are really discounting Julius Randle for the MVP. I got to be honest with you.
He's a close third.
Let me listen. I know the Knicks are technically out of the playoff race right now, but aren't they so much better than we expected?
Yes. Don't you think, man? I mean, my gosh, there's 2 good stories. You're right. Julius Randle. Let's make it 3 good stories. Julius Randle is playing out of his mind. RJ Barrett has improved. He's having Paul Pierce-like second-year numbers. I saw a tweet from Josh Eberle. His numbers are right there with Paul Pierce's second year in the NBA, and that's good company if you're RJ Barrett. And third, and I think it's an impressive third, Emmanuel Quickley. I mean, everybody in the league loves this guy. This guy's stock is going through the roof. So I think they're a great story, Matt. I don't know about you.
Yeah, well, and I would take a 4th story about the Knicks and put a direct relationship with the 3 that you mentioned. Tom Thibodeau has changed the culture there. He's got his hands all over this, and you can say what you want about, he wears on guys. He's demanding. He runs guys into the ground in terms of the minutes that he plays. Some of the guys he trusts more than anybody else, but he gets results. He's gotten results everywhere he's gone, and he will get the most out of that roster. But it was interesting. An hour or 2 ago, I was reading an article in the Post that you look back now, it's 2 years since Porzingis has been traded from the Knicks, and that was kind of universally praised as what is New York doing to – really, it's not that bad. They got quickly out of the deal. They've got a couple more first rounders. They have a possibility at 2 lottery picks this year, depending on where they stand and Dallas stands by the end of this thing. But really, is Porzingis given that much to the Dallas Mavericks? He certainly hasn't been a difference maker like they had thought he'd be.
When he's healthy, he's a second option. But one other thing I'd add with the Knicks, and you made a good point with Thibodeau, the Knicks are league leaders in opponent points per game right now. They're giving up the fewest points per game. So it is an instant impact from this coach. He's doing what he came there to do. And, there's coaches that come and they get you through stages. Thibodeau may not get them to the mountaintop. He may. Let's give him a chance. But he has changed the culture. There's a defensive intensity in New York now. He's bringing the talent out of some of their young guys that, my gosh, if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm more optimistic than I have been in quite a while. I'll be honest. I'm more optimistic. The future looks brighter than it has.
Yeah, and certainly, people say, how much do coaches really matter in professional sports, in the NBA? We're seeing it with the Knicks that whether it's just managing the personalities better or it's X's and O's or some combination thereof, Tibbs has done it in New York. We're seeing it with Chicago. Jim Boylan out, Billy Donovan in. We're seeing that team get the details right a little bit better, other than Damian Lillard in 9 seconds worth of work.
That was very Reggie Miller-esque.
That was interesting.
I gotta be honest with you. You guys going hardcore on my 9-12 Knicks right now.
Is that a tier?
Getting the blood flowing in the right places. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I thought it was a tier.
Well, it's something else coming out of somewhere else.
Okay, well, great. And this is going to lead to a commercial. Is that right?
The Lawnmower 3.0, thanks to Manscaped, is something you should be trusting like 2 million other men have been trusting. Right now, you've got to keep that fully engulfed area ready for Valentine's Day. You want it to look good, you want it to smell good, and if you look good, you smell good, we all know you play good. Just like my New York Knicks, baby. You play much better than your draft pick like Emmanuel Quickly is doing right now. That dude's going to be a starter market, and so can your peen is. So here's what you do to get the offer that we got going right now. The Lawnmower 3.0 plus your Valentine's Day grooming essentials, which include the deodorant for your balls. Your basketballs got to smell good for the ladies. All right. So here's how you get that 20% off and free shipping. Never pay full price if you don't have to. Use the promo code BRAWL, BRAWL. So go to manscaped.com. Use the promo code BRAWL, BRAWL, and you can keep those balls tight on Valentine's Day, just like my Knicks will. You know what I'm saying? You know? Yeah,
I just want to say that brings me back to my high school pitching days where I was the master of the 70-mile-an-hour right down the middle fastball that anybody could hit out of the park. Well done, Archie. I'm impressed.
Okay, so as much as, I want to make this the entire Knicks show, I will wait until they get back into the playoffs to bring him probably up again. And Julius Randle is killing it. That dude's just throwing out triple-doubles all the time. And I would argue if the NBA didn't have them on like a 70-game road West Coast streak, they might be in one of the top 7 spots right now.
That's a very specific argument.
It is, but they literally play like 700 straight games on the road recently out West. Anyway, let's move forward to the East and the top 4 teams there, because we brought up MVPs, and one of those dudes who is having an MVP season, Beau Estes has already brought him up. Joel Embiid is killing it this year. Is it, and I'll start with Beau since you brought him up last, is this all thanks to a brand new head coach?
I think it's a lot. I think it's an injection of new energy. You hear a new voice. I remember when I was growing up, the Lakers fired Pat Riley, and I was like, what on earth is happening? And the reports out of the locker room were they got tired of hearing that same voice over and over and over again. Doc Rivers, if you spend any time around the guy, he's a motivational dude. He'll get you moving. And I think for me, Philly's an interesting case, because if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have felt really good about their chances. But then this trade happens in Brooklyn, and I don't know where I go with the Philadelphia 76ers chances, because Brooklyn's just an absolute wild card at this point. But I love the way that Joel Embiid is playing. I love his game. And I brought it up earlier in the show. I love that we're in this era of small ball, but you're seeing big guys still be successful. Mm-hmm. And I think as far as big guys go, he's the most dominant real big guy. Nikola Jokic isn't 7'1" like Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is an old school big man with some new school game. And I'm just thrilled to see his success. And guys, if you remember when he came into this league, there was worries about it being a Greg Oden situation. Is this guy ever going to have the health that it takes to play long-term in the NBA? He injures his back at Kansas. He would have been the number 1 pick. It would not have ever been Andrew Wiggins if Joel Embiid was healthy. And he gets in Philadelphia's lap. They rest him. They were patient. And now they've got, if not the lead MVP candidate, top 3 for sure. I hear LeBron getting some noise for it as well. But the top 3 MVP candidate for sure.
I was going to say, where do you put him as of right now? Because it feels like the beginning of this season, the first 25 games or so, has been an explosion of Joel Embiid, and he's been very, very, very good before, but not like this. Not like this, where it's been so spectacular night in and night out.
Yeah, I think the consistency is where we've seen him really take off. But yeah, I'd put him right there in that 2 or 3 spot. In the MVP voting as well. It's just like Beau said, by the way, Beau, you're dating yourself a little bit when you were a kid and Pat Riley got fired. Maybe a twinkle in my parents' eye when Pat Riley got fired. I'm not sure exactly.
When I was growing up with Red Auerbach, Matt.
The Peach Basket still, right? I believe so.
Yeah. Dr. James.
But we're just seeing the consistency, and I think part of it, like you said, is the new voice with Philly in Doc Rivers, and he's just getting that, and maybe even it's a little X's and O's, maybe tweaking some of the spots where Joel gets the ball to where he can do some things. And also just trying to show off. He's got passing skills too. He's not just a scorer and a rebounder. He has got mobility. He's got passing skills. He's got some IQ to him. So maybe just a different voice getting him into better spots has led to more success.
It's been such a sort of joy to watch. I've been on the Philadelphia bandwagon for about 2 years now, thinking that they would be this behemoth that would win the East. And it looked like under Brett Brown that just weren't going to finally get to what I thought they would get to. But the start of this season has been so refreshing to sort of watch all of these guys on this team sort of perform at the level that I thought that they could. And you could see why they're the number one team in the East as of recording, because they do have all the pieces to be able to compete and to contend. And I wonder long term, do you think that still continues? Beau, you're about to chime in.
Yeah, well, I think the thing, and I wonder, Matt, your experience with this as well, is last year I was on different shows and I was having people ask me, can Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons coexist? Can those two play together long term? Is there room on the court because Ben Simmons isn't a floor spacer? Does it work for those two? And it seems like, man, it's really working now. Again, and I said this at the top of the broadcast, it's a prove it to me situation with Philly. Does this work in the playoffs? Because they've had regular season success before, maybe not this much, and maybe Joel Embiid hadn't had this much, and now that Doc Rivers is there, maybe it's new. But I still wait for them to prove it to me in the playoffs. But the one question I don't hear asked as much is Ben Simmons, and the fascinating thing is, look who their GM is. Look who's running stuff.
Sure.
He would have made a move at James Harden, and he didn't end up acquiring James Harden. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are still together there. That's fascinating to me.
Definitely. I think when Philly has been at its best over the last few years, it's when they've had the JJ Redicks, the Ersan Ilyasovas, the Marco Bellinellis, the guys to space the floor. And I think that was a very important part of their offseason, getting guys like Danny Green and getting Seth Curry, who are sharpshooters and can give Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid the space they need to do what they do best. I mean, we're never going to expect Ben Simmons to start knocking down threes with any sort of regularity. So what are you going to do? You're going to try to give him the most space you can, and that's putting shooters out there on the floor. That's when they were best under Brett Brown. That's when they've been very good this year, is when they've had those shooters there. But if you're talking about Morey, I am surprised. Archie, the last time I was on with you, I thought Philly had the best chances of getting Harden because of the Morey connection. And I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that's Doc pleading with Daryl Morey saying, hey, give me a shot with these guys before we do anything, because if we can get this right between the two of them, they are young enough that we could have the next 8 to 10 years settled if we can get these guys working together and performing at their best.
Matt and Archie, I do wonder this too. If Philly would have started off 2-10, do they move heaven and earth in a different way to get James Harden there than they did now? I look at, you mentioned Seth Curry. He's the number 2 all-time field 3-point percentage guy in NBA history. He's ahead of his brother. He's that good of a shooter. And then the guy who hit the game-winning shot against the Lakers, Tobias Harris. And that's a guy that's averaging 20 points a game. So they've got guys out there, man. Like you said, Matt, I don't know why they didn't get Harden, but I think if they were 2-10, they'd have tried harder. And I think they're probably pretty happy where they are.
Yeah, I would think so too. Being number 1 in the East kind of helps.
Yeah, good.
We made the comment, Joel and I did. Joe Cordes, who is on vacation somewhere exotic, where COVID probably also still is. That's such an important part of playing basketball right now is health, because if you can keep your team healthy and mostly intact, which Philly has been able to, the way the standings are so compact right now, you could go from 11th to 4th in 2 weeks, like nothing. Like it could be such a dramatic change that if you could just sort of stay healthy, not to mention have the dudes who could do it when everyone's healthy anyway. But it's such a different type season. And I wonder if you think that sort of impacts how good you think we see some of these teams as, Dags.
Yeah, it's really tough when you see a team like Memphis that goes however many days without playing a game because they can't get enough guys that are healthy and able to play, to then jump back after missing 10 days of action and try and win a game against a team that's been consistently playing throughout. I think those are going to be some wild swings, and probably the biggest X factor of the season is which teams can still maintain enough healthy bodies to field rosters every game and go out there. So it's one of those things where it's unpredictable. You don't know where it goes. And honestly, it's a little bit of the luck of the draw. Boston can't play with Jason Tatum for a few games because he's come down with it. But, if you're another team and you lose a couple guys at the end of the bench, there's not nearly the same effect as losing your best player who then has to go, a week, 2 weeks without being able to play. So there's a lot of luck involved with it. It's a strange time, but health certainly I would say is the biggest X factor.
Yeah, Beau and like that Memphis team came out. They've won like 6 in a row now. Like they've come back and they played pretty darn well considering. Plus, Ja Morant's come back and that's been kind of nice. I think a little sooner than we were expecting him to be able to come back from his injury. And next thing you know, he's still good. But that's just sort of an interesting sort of note on how the acclimation period of this season really is, because we're still very much in the middle of a pandemic that affects everything, because we keep getting reminded every day with games that are getting postponed. There's no bubble anymore.
Yeah, no, you're really right. The no bubble thing has made a difference. I think there's a few things to keep in mind here. One, regarding Memphis, I've got a buddy who works in that organization named Lang Whitaker. They're quite optimistic about the young roster that they have. But remember, not only do we have guys going in and out when they go through the COVID protocols, there wasn't a preseason like we're used to. So these guys can't train together, so they're not there all the time. They have a bigger roster now because the two-way guys are just largely there all the time now. So these guys are bumping in minutes. If they're the ones that don't have COVID, all of a sudden these two-way guys are playing minutes. It's so inconsistent. And it's hard to judge anything. And the weird thing so all of this goes on now in January, right? January and February. And let's just assume the best and that COVID's at its worst right now and that we're going to get better as the playoffs go. So as we get closer to the playoffs, hopefully the numbers come down as vaccines go up and you have teams getting more and more and more healthy and playing more and more and more consistently together. I think you'll get a better gauge on where each team is in those moments than now, because now it's an all hands on deck approach. You've got guys who, for the most part, wouldn't be in the NBA at the end of the bench. They're getting an NBA check this year, so I'm sure those guys are thrilled. But it's just tough to really make an honest assessment unless a team's really healthy. And even if a team is really healthy, say the Lakers are really healthy and they're going to play an opponent that's not really healthy, how honest of a judgment is that even? Yeah. So it's just tough to make a real assessment.
Yeah, it's why you want to be able to react quickly and say, "Oh, this means so much."
Yeah,
this week, that week, but it's really difficult, especially since we're still waiting. We haven't even gotten to the supposed All-Star break coming up, and I do want to ask about that in just a moment. But can I first get you guys' thoughts on the top 4 teams in the East? Dags, if you were to put the seeds 1, 2, 3, 4, and you could put them whether or not now or what you think they're going to be in the future, what do you think 1 through 4 looks like in the East for you? And I know I'm going to hear a certain friendly orange and blue team in your mentions.
Oh, we are awfully presumptuous over Syracuse. They don't even compete in the Eastern Conference, so I don't know how they'll fit in, but I do like their prospects. But no, number 1 seed for me, and I'll go long-term potential as we get towards the playoffs, is Brooklyn to me. I think, obviously, for obvious reasons, most star power that they've got. I do like the role players that have kind of emerged here through there. I think Joe Harris is a viable threat offensively. I like the guys that they have, just kind of piecing together the rest of the roster, and I expect there will be a lot more of that before the end of the season. But I'd put Philly 2 right now. I do like where they go. I think the Doc Rivers factor is sizable. Boston 3. I think one of the more underrated stories to me is just how much losing Gordon Hayward and Kemba being hit or miss as far as when he'll play has allowed both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to just blossom into full-blown stars now. Like, they're not even – it was almost like they had to give way to the older veterans who were no longer as good as them anymore. And now, so they've just been able to spread their wings and fly. And I think the two of them with Kemba in there in that third spot has been better than having Kemba and Gordon Hayward almost minimizing what Jaylen Brown and Tatum can do. So I do like Boston in the 3 spot there. And assuming that there is some health going their way, I actually kind of like Indiana. I really do like the pieces they've gotten. If Karis LeVert can come back, the timetable for his return is kind of unknown. But they've got – I'm not saying they'll do any damage in the playoffs. I don't see them going exceptionally far. But I really like certainly their starting 5 with the pieces they've got there. I'm a big fan of Indiana and what they've done the last year or so.
Wow, no Milwaukee in your top 4. Bo, what do you think? Milwaukee in your top 4?
It's tough. I want to start with Brooklyn first. Brooklyn is the worst defensive team in the Eastern Conference right now. No team has made it and won a championship that was not a top 11, I believe, defense in the league since the early 2000s. So they have to tighten up on the defensive end to at least not have to break some sort of historic precedent and win an NBA championship. So I agree with Dags in a playoff series. I expect Brooklyn to be very good. I think my favorite team, if they're fully healthy, this is going to come out of absolutely nowhere. I think it is the Boston Celtics. I think it is because I have so much faith. Jason Tatum, I already thought was a legitimate superstar. I think Jaylen Brown is right now right there with him. I think he's that good. I think he's made the leap from star to superstar now in front of our eyes. And then if Kemba Walker comes back at full strength, that's a team that really can cause some trouble. As far as I'm concerned, Philly, I told you earlier, they're prove it to me. I still think they're prove it to me. But I like the talent, and I do love, what Tobias Harris adds to the mix with Doc Rivers now there in Philly, complimenting Joel Embiid. Because again, Ben Simmons is trouble for me. As far as a scorer, defenses can lag off of him in the playoffs, and they will, because defenses are better in the playoffs. Teams are better in the playoffs. So, and then you bring up Milwaukee, and that's such an interesting case because Giannis Antetokounmpo is the 2-time defending MVP of the league, and people are sleeping on him now. Mm-hmm. Absolutely sleeping on him. And he's got a teammate in Chris Middleton who is a star. And he's been an all-star several years in a row, but he is an absolute star. I don't totally sleep on that team, but Dags, I don't know about you. They're in a prove it to me category as well. So I would go Boston. I would go Philly. I would go Milwaukee. And then I would go, until their numbers get better, Brooklyn. But I do think their numbers are going to get better. Their defense is awful, guys. They're giving up over 116 points a game.
Is that bad? Is that bad? Is that a lot?
It's pretty bad. It's bad.
It feels like a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Mentioned a bunch of those dudes, including a guy in Antetokounmpo who is getting slept on. And I think a lot of it that the NBA loves new. And if you give a guy a couple MVPs, you're kind of
he's the establishment.
Yeah, you kind of want to look for somebody fresh and new to start put the votes for. Like, you could say LeBron's the MVP a bunch of years, but I mean, how many MVPs are you going to give LeBron James when you could give other really good players, the awards as well? And so that's why I say put them on your daily fantasy team over at DraftKings. That's right. You can get right now a deposit bonus of up to $1,000 over at DraftKings. That's because of our partnership with the Brawl Network. All you got to do is perform a few very simple steps. 1, get the app there. Number 2, create that DraftKings Sportsbook account. Then make your first deposit. must be at least $5. And I always say if you can't afford $5, then you can't afford this game. Number 3, DraftKings will then take your deposit and then match your first deposit at 20%, up to $1,000. But you got to do it right now. Won't keep this claim going forever. So go to DraftKings.com and claim your post right now. All you got to do is go to dkng.co/partner, PARTNER. All right, dudes, let me wrap it up with one final piece of this puzzle, because I feel like we get to, disappointments and what do we call those? Surprises all the time. That's kind of fun, kind of not. I'm interested in getting back into this real story, which is the NBA All-Star Game and what they're going to do. The All-Star Game really is very tentative right now this year and what they're trying to figure out. Since we've discussed the story last week, there's not been anything new with the NBA and the All-Star Game. The thought is maybe you do a little bit of philanthropy in Atlanta and you have the game and some of the festivities, but it's not going to be quite the same. So Dags, let me just ask you from a broad sense, does it make sense for the NBA to still try to continue to do what they've always sort of been able to do, which is to have this kind of mid-season event? Because we're in very unprecedented times. Does it still make sense to try to do this now, especially when you can't have a very important factor in this, which is the fans?
Yeah, I mean, I get the motivation for wanting to do it. It is supposed to be about the fans and the fan experience. The whole weekend is geared towards that. And it would seem kind of hollow without that aspect. So in terms of risk reward, I'm not sure that the reward is sizable enough to risk all of the things that would need to go into it from a health standpoint, from a logistics standpoint. And then what exactly are we going to do? Is it going to be more self-serving than it will be beneficial? You've got to ask yourself those questions. But I think in the time we're in, I think the risks outweigh the rewards.
I think that it's, Beau, this is what I find so fascinating about this, is that sure, it's the tradition, sure, it's all about the fans, and the NBA is trying to keep fan interest. They're announcing that there are days that you can vote that are double value days, it's like double coupon days for your votes, like they'll count for double, which is, I guess, an incentive to do something. But it just, and I don't want to seem sort of blasé about such a cool event like this, but what's a dunk contest without the fans? What's a 3-point contest without there? In fact, that the pandemic, we're struggling to get games played as it is now, Beau. Like, do we want to just put a certain number of dudes in Atlanta, for example, and then just say we'll all reconvene in a week? I mean, I get the break part, but the break to then also do this, I don't know. I'm just skeptical of this, and I want to know where you're coming from.
I think there's some value in having that break and having that isolation from a health standpoint, rather than getting everybody together, having them all travel here, taking all those risks associated with that travel. And Arky, you brought up a great point. Let's say we have the greatest dunk in NBA history, NBA dunk contest history. Let's say somebody does a flip dunk and nobody cheers and it's absolutely silent. What a weird moment that's going to be. I know they're going to try to pipe in crowd noise and everything like that. I don't know that there's enough value in that. I don't know that there's enough reward for the risk that you're going to take. And I just don't see it. I think that, look, obviously they're going to name all-stars. They're going to name all-stars, and you're going to know who the all-stars would be and are. But I don't think there's a value in playing the game. The other thing to consider, and it's something that nobody likes to consider, we are losing money now. We are, and it's not a charity. The league's trying to make money, so it's a tough thing. But for a league that went so hardcore and set such a wonderful example with that bubble and how successful it was, I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense to then turn around and say, whatever, we're throwing everybody into Atlanta, into hotels, and we're going to hope that they stay isolated, and we're going to try to throw an all-star game and mix up all these guys from all these different teams, because usually it's just two teams getting together, but now you got all these guys from all these different teams mixing up, and then they're going to go back to their own teams where if there was some sort of transmission, you spread it all around the league. It's a real big risk to me. And I just don't know that it makes sense in this day and age. And again, the one thing that is the wild variable in all this is we don't know where we're going to be in the pandemic at that moment, a week or two in advance. Maybe we're getting better. Maybe a lot of people are getting the vaccine. Maybe it's working. We just don't know. But I don't buy the risk reward equation there working out for a game here in Atlanta.
Yeah, man, can I just honestly say that what is an All-Star week without Kevin Hart playing in the Celebrity All-Star game? Like, does it count? Is it even a thing?
I don't think it's official, honestly. I don't.
It's minimized, and I chose that word carefully in terms of Kevin Hart's stature, possibly.
He's tiny. Okay, it's just okay. Well, real quick, I'll just yes or no. We can go one way. Matt, do you think there's a chance the NBA leans towards not having an All-Star week of festivities?
I would say it's unlikely that there's an All-Star festivities weekend kind of thing. Yeah.
Bo, what do you think?
I doubt they have All-Star festivities. I doubt it.
Oh,
you wanted a yes or no? I'll say no. No, there will not be one.
Okay, so they can, so they'll give us our double value days for voting. That way we can feel extra inclined to go online and vote for it to not have. I just think it's interesting to sort of. I get, Bo, what you're saying. Like, you want to know who the All-Stars are, so to speak. Like, you're going to have to try that sort of event.
That is important, though, right? I want to know who they think would have been the All-Stars. I think that there's value in that, especially to me for first-time All-Stars, for guys who haven't been All-Stars before. This will be LeBron's 347th time as an NBA All-Star. I don't need to know that. I need to know the other guys, though.
No, I think that's fair. I think it's very fair. Like we're still trying to get games in, man. Like it doesn't make sense to like essentially create a potential super spreader event, despite all the testing, whatever it can be. Listen, Atlanta's known for a couple things, and one of them
lemon pepper wings.
The lemon pepper wings. That's right. All right, that's going to do it for us here on Basketball by Association. Matt D'Agostino, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bo. Always a pleasure to see you as well. Let's try to do this more often.
Yeah, man. Let's get together more often, guys. It's great seeing you, Arky, and that wonderful haircut you have. And Dags, your haircut always stays trim. I'm impressed.
Yes. I have no barber for such needs.
Bo speaks of pure jealousy, which eventually he will. Are you going to donate that hair to somebody at some point?
I should. That's what my wife was telling me. Look, I guess lucky to have it. It's not great hair. I mean, there's a lot of it, but it's not great hair.
Well, that's the most important question is what does the missus think of it all?
Mm-hmm. Oh, she hates my hair with a passion. Doesn't want me in the house anymore. That's what
that's not too far removed from general.
Nothing's changed. Nothing.
Yeah.
There's a few members of the cult of GOATmentator Estes that would be interested in a couple of strands. That's all I'm saying.
My whole goal in life was always to be a cult leader, and I'm glad I achieved that mark. That's what I'm happy about.
That is something I aspire to as well, but only Bo has it. Guys, thank you for your time. This has been the Bo Outlaw episode, guys.
I like it.
All right. See you next time.